right, the concept of the glass ceiling is a well-known phenomenon in the realm of gender equality and women empowerment. It represents the invisible yet unbreakable barriers that prevent women from advancing in their careers, particularly in male-dominated industries and leadership positions.
All right, that's absolutely true, Inre. And in an effort to address the issue, the Nigerian government, of course, over the years, have been trying to implement a 35% affirmative action policy, which is aimed at increasing women's representation in decision-making positions. But the effectiveness of the policy has been called into question, leading to a recent Federal High Court judgment that has sparked important discussions on the matter.
Well, the government implemented a 35% affirmative action policy, and that was in 2006, mandating that at least 35% of all appointed and elected positions be reserved for women. Now, the goal of this policy has to do with addressing the gender parity in decision-making roles and to provide women with equal opportunities to participate in governance and leadership. However, despite the implementation of this affirmative action policy, progress has been slow, according to some women, but some men will say, well, progress has been made. And for the women who think progress has not been made, the glass ceiling remains firmly in place for many women in Nigeria. Women continue to face numerous barriers and obstacles that hinder their advancement. And that's the reason for our focus on this second segment of Good Morning Nigeria today, which is on the 35% affirmative action matters arising.
All right, so we have two very, very strong advocates of affirmative action for women. Dr. NLB is a familiar face. She's a very strong voice for women and gender issues. She's an educationist, a journalist, human rights and development advocacy professional. It's good to see you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Not in your regular hairdo.
Oh, that is NLB. NAD.
Okay, yes, that's NLB. That's NAD.
You know, it happens very often.
Oh, yeah.
It happens very often. Even when both of us are sitting together.
Absolutely.
Like during the Nawaj delegates election recently, both of us were sitting together, yet it's fine.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. And we also have Barrister Zainab Buba Mawar from Aspire Women Forum. Good to have you.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
All right. By the way, you women are looking really good. Like the 35% affirmative action is doing great. So I hope that's what your response will be today. Because if it's not good enough, then I don't think we should be looking this beautiful.
I don't know why we. When we talk about affirmative actions, so much, attention is just directed at the government. We should also look at the MDAs that are doing well, and commend the MDAs. And I know that the NTA is doing absolutely well in terms of, yes, female inclusion, in if decision making, and I'm proud to say that even the ladies that surround the leadership are mostly women. Yes. So that's just by the way. So, but let's start with Dr. Enede. What is this judgment all about that is sparking, renewed?
Yeah, it will be good to start with the lawyer.
Okay, Zainab.
Yes, I want to also commend NTA, first of all, because I know that a lot of your directors are women, and I think you deserve a round of applause. We're all very proud of you for making that happen. So yes, this judgment, as she said, there's a national gender policy that was brought about in 2006, and in fact it was ratified even by FEC, but it was never implemented. And so 9 CSOs came together and decided to sue the federal government to ensure that there is gender mainstreaming and women are able to have the access to the proper participation in government, talking about the 35% affirmative action. And happily, I think it was on the 6th of April, 2022, that judgment was passed, and it was passed in our favor. So one of the main issues I think that was very important was this 35% affirmative action, which the court has said it will be implemented. And what that means is that even within political parties, they have to ensure that within their membership and then within the candidates that they push out, there are 35% of them that are women. And then also within the leadership of the MDAs and the ministries themselves, you have that 35% affirmative action where women can have the proper participation in decision-making and government activities. And, you know, to God be the glory, the Judge Denatus, really went in on it and explained that, in fact, not implementing this national gender policy and not implementing the 35% affirmative action was unconstitutional and illegal in some ways, because, you know, within the 1999 Constitution as amended, there are some sections that deal with discrimination. And so when you withhold power or access to power or decision making from a group of people that can be identified as citizens of Nigeria, you are going against the law. If I get a little bit technical, if you don't mind. He was saying that it went against, first of all, under Chapter 4 of the 99 Constitution as amended, Section 42 talks about freedom from discrimination. And so that in essence means that nobody can be discriminated against based on their sex or their ethnicity or their political opinions or their community backgrounds. It's not allowed within the 99 Constitution. And so when you tell a person that they cannot be given a certain position merely and mainly because they're a woman, you are discriminating against them and you're going against the Constitution. Also, Section 147, subsection 3 of the Constitution talks about the president being able to appoint ministers for the Federation. But that has to be in line with Section 14, subsection 3, which talks about the fact that whoever you're bringing into such offices, or whoever the group of people that you're bringing into such offices are, they have to go hand in hand with the federal character in order to promote national unity. And this isn't being done because you can't marginalize ethnicity, or you can't even predominantly pick people from few states or sectional groups. And I believe that men and women form part of the sectional groups. So it's quite interesting.
Yes, I'm a bit concerned, Imre, because when you now talk about the Constitution,
yes,
and you're asking for 35% affirmative action, for this to be implemented, it has to be domesticated.
Absolutely.
In line with the provisions of the Constitution.
Yes.
I'm wondering, did it require the court to, you know, give its judgment, and is the judgment binding on the legislature?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Zainab. You see, this has a background. I like us to look here, listen carefully, and see where the problem is, because it's a matter of indebtedness to a section of Nigerians and struggling reluctance to offset the deficit. So everywhere in the world, even if it is institutional relationship or individuals, if you are indebted, you negotiate your way out of the indebtedness in an event that you are not able to pay. Let's look back into history. Like Barrister said, it has a history. Apart from 1949, that Nigeria joined the United Nations as one of the key members of United Nations and agreed that, look, everything that has to do with human rights will comply. We've not been able to see that. Then specifically, what they call the Charter of the Rights of Women, the Charter of Women's Rights globally. That is Convention on the Elimination of the Rights of Women, particularly CEDAW, C-E-D-A-W.
Yes.
Nigeria is a signatory. Nigeria has even gone to the extent of even signing the optional protocol and reporting regularly as required. Yet, we've not seen an opportunity for Nigeria to be able to implement the provisions. time will fail us to be able to go into some other details, but so it's a matter of consistent failure to comply with what you have voluntarily, not that you are under compulsion or hypnotized into. So you have that. Then we even brought it closer home at the level of African Union. We will not, time will fail us to go to the Commonwealth and other structures that we are part of. At the level of African Union, we said, okay, how do we make this more compliant with our culture, with our people, and with our situation particularly? So that was how we came up in 2004 with what is called the Maputo Protocol. That is the rights, people's rights, and specifically the rights of women. If you look at that, it's been rated as the best, the richest in terms of the empowerment of the people of Africa, particularly women. So this is our own charter for the women of Nigeria. So if you have for women of Africa. And Nigeria, you know, will always be at the forefront of appending her signature. So if you have done this historically, and you say, okay, in 2005, you say, in order to give effect to these documents, the CEDAW, as well as the Maputo Protocol, you now, it's 20 years this year. So we are not talking about what just happened yesterday, so that people can understand the history. And you don't say these women are greedy, because they've been explaining that it's just greed that is driving women to acts of position. It's anxiety. It's just wanting to be part of government.
I would interrupt you there.
Okay.
You know, my question or my thought at this point. You're talking about the implementation of what Nigeria has signed, and then you know what has been put there. You're talking about a judgment and all of that. You know, earlier we're applauding the NTA, and I don't think that we have women in managerial positions in the NTA because of appointment. It's because they've been able to meet expectation, and then they can actually you know, deliver in whatever, you know, assignment has been given to them. But we're looking specifically at the political space now. Do you really think that Nigerian women have been able to meet expectations in that regard? Because, I mean, we're not just going to hand over presidency or governorship to a woman. Do you think that the Nigerian woman, in this past 20 years you're talking about, have the Nigerian women been able to build capacity, you know, in that regard? Because nobody's going to give you anything if you're not up to it.
Okay. Yes. Well, that's a very interesting question. And first of all, I'm going to ask you a question back. Do you think that the Nigerian men have shown that they have the capacity to lead? If you're going to ask that question of a woman, be ready to ask it of a man as well. It's not about that. And I do believe that there must be some deliberate footsteps that are taken towards putting women in these decision-making powers. The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. Only you walking in this shoe of a woman knows where it's pinching you. How can a man tell me about maternity leave? How can a man tell me what I need? So there's something to be said for the need of women in leadership. And history has shown us time and time again that when women are in power, things work. We are critical stakeholders to the economic development of any country. And now to your question, whether I think women have shown that they are able to lead properly in Nigeria, my answer is unequivocally yes. We have powerful women, intelligent women, women that have risked their lives, women that have died and bled on the flag for this country, for the freedoms that we so badly need and love. And so when we ask questions like women must fulfill this to become this, we don't ask those same questions of men. And so it's very unfair sometimes, because why do we have to reach a quota, or why do we have to be extra special? I saw in the news the other day that a man, a very well-known man, said that a particular woman embezzled so much money and he lost hope in the Nigerian woman. But then what do you say for women like Amina Mohammed, who is the Undersecretary General of the United Nations and doing us proud every day? What do you say for women like Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who is doing amazingly well day after day at WTO?
To respond to your question about the men, you see, they may not have capacity like a woman who want to look at it, but they are always willing to put themselves forward. In the political space, in the political space, let's just take a look at the general elections, you know, earlier this year. How many many women were actually willing to come forward to ask for elective positions? If you look at the political parties and look at their formations, how many women are actually willing, you know, to go through the issues?
This is what we're fighting for. It's not about the willingness of women to come forward and ask for these positions. It's about the unwillingness of the men to give the women a chance.
Do you really think it's the unwillingness,
yes,
or do you really think it's the unwillingness of the men, or you think that we have just very few women who are willing?
No, we don't have very few women. I happen to be the past APC, you know, the Forum for Female People that run for elections, and we are a lot. But there's so many things that come into it. Even the economic prowess to push for power is not there. Because it's, I always say that politics is not an exercise in poverty. You have to have money. But how do you get that money? So there are so many things, you know, attached to why you don't see as many women as you might like, or as many women as you do men, when it comes to taking political steps. Okay, it's very difficult.
Barrister Zainab and Dr. Ede, I'm just, you know, I'm just imagining how this is likely to play out. There's absolutely no doubt that, you know, outside the political representation, mainstreaming women, I mean, government, MDAs and all that, like we all said, you know, have done well in the area. And there are, you know, at the subnational level too, there are state governments that have started to, you know, keep up with mainstreaming women in their decision making. But I think the key issue is in the area of political representation. That's where we have, you know, the very appalling statistics. Yes, when it comes to comparatively with the rest of Africa. And I'm wondering how this is likely to play out in that area, in the area of political representation, getting more women, you know, into the National Assembly. Because as it is now, I don't know how many women that we have in the National Assembly.
Just 4 in the Senate.
And 7, I think, in the National, in the House of Reps.
And if it is the legislature that makes the law, and the law in the Constitution says provides equal opportunity, equal rights, equal obligations, and opportunities for every Nigerian, is there a way in which the Nigerian woman have been excluded by the law?
No, you see, if you look at the 5 reliefs that were sought by the 9 women organizations that went to court, if you look at the court, many of the women represented us as lawyers, many of them. They went there to defend this matter. If the 5 reliefs that were sought were granted by the judge, and even the preliminary objection that the defendant's lawyer, that is this time now, federal government, was dismissed by the judge, you know that there is a problem.
Who were the defendants?
It's federal government, because the women we took federal government to court. We took federal government to court because it's a federation. So it's from federal government to the state to the local government area. The question you are asking, the issue here is that there is statistics and there are processes, is the unwillingness. It's not only in the area of political appointment. When they are sharing money, when they talk about budget, even the gentlemen that were in the studio, did they ever talk about engendering the budget? So it means there is no plan really to empower women using the national budget in the first instance. If they're even talking about consultation, how many times have you seen women brought together? I'm not saying at the level of just trying to get their votes, being consulted. So it is beyond just the political appointment alone. We are looking at everything. Everything. Yeah, every position.
What were your prayers? I would like to hear
the prayers are 5. One of 5. One of it was that the affirmative action that is the federal government is reluctant in granting is a criminality and it's a negligence he accepted. And that a process should be put in place to quickly begin to implement. So is this something bad? So it's about women helping Nigeria to really be what Nigeria should be and looking good before the world.
But this is the first stage. This is the High Court.
Yeah. but you see, that is the worst part of it, that I was having conversation with her. It's the first stage, but the federal government has 21 days to appeal. And federal government appeal under Malami, appealed after 3 months. That alone is a level of impunity that should be called to question and should be dealt with decisively. This brings us to the fact that we realize that each time women try to push, or men try to support women to push for the inclusion of women and gender equality, it's just a basic thing, it's a basic minimum. We find that they get punished by the system or by persons. Why should that be so? So who is going to punish Malami and federal government for going to going to court after the time had lapsed? She is a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but what I know is that you have a window of when you will appeal. But you are appealing. It means you are indebted to Nigerian women, and you are showing impunity that you will not. Why you should only negotiate? My expectation was that women come, let's have a conversation. What is the processes? What can we do? How do we shatter this glass ceiling? We'll be able to provide appropriate appropriation. We'll be able to put in place structures to do this. We'll be able to negotiate to say, okay, look at the statistics. That's what people did in other countries, and they are moving. So Nigeria, the big brother, big sister Nigeria, is bringing shame onto us, and we should not accept this.
We will not bring shame, of course, and of course, because I'm a woman. Because I'm a woman, I just hope that the federal government will do the needful. Barrister, I'll get back to you again. You're talking about winning in court and all the laws and all that. Beautiful on paper. But you know that in Nigeria, it's not just the law that operates here.
Absolutely.
Culture plays a big role. Religion. All right? Yeah. So, I mean, it's not just about, you know, having it beautifully said or beautifully written somewhere. Okay, 35% affirmative action is now in place and all of that. Do you really think that our society is ready, as far as, let's talk about politics now. I think that's like the main area. Do you think that society would accept this? And then what are you trying to do just so that we could change our mindset and begin to accept more women?
You are absolutely right. In Nigeria, having something said to be law doesn't definitely mean that it will be enforced or implemented, even when a court says it should be, unfortunately. But the societal norms as they are really are a huge roadblock, you know, within Nigeria. And so that's why organizations like mine, Aspire Women Forum, and like that of Adora Onyechere, GSAI, we tend to come together and look for the way out. And so we do what we call the mindset reset. So we're trying to look at the gatekeepers of the society, you know, the traditional rulers, going back to the school, and, you know, other members of the community that have a lot to do with the way that the norms and cultures are perceived. Because it's a cultural thing. It's not really a religious thing. You know, I'm a Muslim. My mother, God rest her soul, was a Catholic, Igbo Catholic. And so I think I have a good grasp of both religions. And I've never seen anywhere in either of these religions where they said women should be denied equality or equity. And it's important to know that when you talk about equality, you're talking about the access to opportunities. Because people seem to think equality, you know, like we're sitting down here, they seem to think what we want is women and men are equal. That's not the problem. The equality we're talking about is equal access to opportunities, and the equity we're talking about is the recognition that different groups of people need different things, and so you want to give them that equal access to opportunities and resource to make sure that they have equal outcomes. So it's important that people understand that. Everyone hates feminists, but they don't understand the real nuances of it all. So more to your point, within Nigeria, we have a lot of organizations, you know, Women in Politics, Nigeria Women Trust Fund, Women Radio run by my Auntie Tong Shonaya, and of course Auntie here. We have a lot of meetings, transgenerational discourse, mentorships and things like that, trying to change, first of all, the women and the way that they perceive things to be, and then more importantly, the men, because we can't keep talking to ourselves. You know, we're not being discriminatory against ourselves only. It's coming from the men as well. And so that's why I believe, just like Auntie was saying, that it's very important not only to have the legal backing, but to have the political will. and that's why you're going to say I'm being an APC lady here. But the truth of the matter is that I think that finally in Nigeria today we have a leadership in the person of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, His Excellency, the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who has come up and said, look, within his renewed hope agenda, that look, we understand that women are critical stakeholders to the development of our economy, and we're ready to mainstream, and we're ready to give the 35% affirmative action. But he has said that it won't be done in a day. It's something that has to happen over time. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day. And he has also said that in as much as, like you keep saying, politics is important, but also the private sector is very important, and he's called on them publicly to look at this issue of women. And if you look at the appointments that he has made, because people seem to think the only important appointments are ministers. No, it goes from all the levels of government, and that's why it's called gender mainstreaming. And I think he's done very well with that.
You know, Barrister Zainab and Dr. Ede, you know, we've had, I can't count the number of times we've had conversation on this issue, and indeed we did you know, a mini report here in the NTA on women representation in, you know, underrepresentation in politics and in decision making. But the issue that came out of that conversation is that even amongst women themselves, they are not agreed as to 35% affirmative action via reservation. 35% affirmative action, you know, some of them have emphasized via merit. And even the National Assembly itself has said, look, it is not that we are denying Nigerian women the opportunity, you know, to be represented. But the Nigerian women have not been able to articulate and, you know, and detechnitize what affirmative action means. I don't know if
that is not true, because if you look at the gender policy, we have this document that is progressively giving us opportunity to do what we need to do. Like Senator Stella Oduah would say, do the needful. In 2006, in the document, the benchmark for appointment, policies, appropriation, everything you can think of. When we talk about calling people to meet, if you call men 7 times, call women 3 times. Do you see the ratio? We didn't mind, but look, in reviewing it again, we realize that there is a need for Nigeria to move faster. We don't have the time. We need to move. Well, it has been moved to 50%. So if you have 50%, the document is reader friendly. It has an implementation plan. What else do you need? If you go to the VAP, I was the VAP coordinator, and it's an act of parliament that is the parliament itself that even gave this document to us. After so much push, the question is how much appropriation has been done. It's like giving with one right hand, the right hand taking with the left hand. The question here now is not that we are not agreeing. We are in agreement. That's why we have the gender policy. We are in agreement. That's why we are talking today. We are in agreement. That's why we went to court. And the court has given us a relief.
I wish we had a lot more time. But I just want to ask, what has been the response of this present administration to the court judgment, and what is the women's next line of conversation?
I mean, we're all excited, and I think he can only say now because the judgment came out in 2022, so it's out of his scope of presidency. But for the women, I can speak for us and say that we're very excited. But just like you've said, it's not just about a law. We need the political will, which I do believe that we have, in as much as we might not be moving at the pace that people want. But the court
judgment is binding.
It's absolutely binding.
It
is absolutely binding. Yes. Of course, we spoke about the appeal and the failure to meet the time deadlines, so we just have to wait and see how that plays out.
All right,
but definitely
thank you, Barrister Zainab Bubamawara. Because of time, I think we'd have to stop at this point. And I also like to appreciate Dr. Ene Ede for joining us for the program. This conversation is a continuous one.
It is.
Just hope that between now and the next general elections we'll get to see something different.
Women need healing from this traumatic experience they are going through. We need that healing.
are you sure we're going through a traumatic experience? Some people will tell you
It
that in the
is.
past administration, the trader money, the market money, more women benefited.
No, what we are going
from
through
such
is because
schemes.
a lot of us will spend so much time doing advocacy, money will be budgeted, and you know you will not do the right thing. So it's traumatic. So we need national healing.
Okay, all right. I hope that women
We need to
would
come
get
back
the
and
national
continue this
healing.
Exactly.
conversation.
All right, thank you so much. So we'll take a break now, or no, rather, we'll take foreign news. Please stay with us.